It was June 2004, and Jan Sardi, the screenwriter, and I were looking for another project to do together. We'd already been involved with 2 films, of course. The first film was Shine, and we had been searching for something to make together again. And Jan was recommended Mao's Last Dancer to read. So we read the book simultaneously and loved it. We both realised that this was a wonderful story to bring to film, him to adapt and me to produce. I researched all sorts of newspaper stories of Lee to see where I could find him. I found that Lee worked in Melbourne in the finance district, and there was a photograph, I think, online of him standing outside a building with a name plaque, and I looked at the tenant list of that building and found there was a stockbroking company there, so I rang them up and found that he did in fact work there. One of the most difficult aspects of shooting in China was to do with finding the commune location where Lee had grown up. And we went to Qingdao, where his family had lived on the commune, and of course it doesn't exist anymore. We looked all around Beijing to try and find the locations we wanted. And by enormous good fortune, the location scouts came up with a commune up in the mountains north of the Great Wall, where we found the remnants of an old commune. It was still an arduous journey to get up to the mountains with some 300 odd Chinese crew and an enormous number of Australian crew that we took as well. Casting Mao's Last Dancer was obviously difficult, and Bruce did say early on, if we don't find the boy to play Lee, we won't have a film. Well, of course, the difficulty was we needed 3 ages of Lee. We needed an 11-year-old, a 15-year-old, and an 18-year-old. So we had 3 times the problem. But by enormous good fortune, we found the young boy to play Lee in China, and we found in Australia Cheng Wu to play the middle 15-year-old Lee, and in Birmingham in the UK we found Chi Chow to play Lee as an adult. But of course behind Lee we had to find all the dancers of those 3 different age groups. 15 and 18 were all very well, but we had to find all the young children of 11 to go through the early stages of the dancing process in Madame Mao's Dance Academy. We had to bring dancers from all over China to Beijing and accommodate them and have dancing instruction and coaches to run them to studios every day and to feed them and to make sure that they had all the help and care that they needed. We had to have all the dancers near at hand so that we could practice and rehearse. Graham Murphy, our choreographer, had to run them through all the dance routines that were going to be filmed. So Bruce and I set off to the UK, and we didn't know whether Chi Chow was going to be the right dancer. We went to Sunderland and we saw the Birmingham Royal Ballet recital where Chi danced, and we auditioned him. And it was obvious to us that here we had found Lee as an adult. In finding dancers who could act was much more natural than we could have imagined, because dancers already are performing to an audience and they're not afraid of the audience. And so with Bruce's remarkable directing skills, and he is a wonderful actor's director, it was possible then to take on dancers who were just one step away from really being terrific actors. Mao's Last Dancer is set just at the end of the Cultural Revolution, and it's very important for us to establish the early peasant upbringing of Li Xuanxin, to look authentic, not easy, because of course film makes everything look wonderful and glowing when we really need it to look harsh and difficult for Li as a child. He leaves home and is sent to Beijing. He doesn't see his family for many years, and he's going through his growing process as well. Times are changing in China. When Li goes back to China later on as an adult, and things have changed enormously by then. So we're running a number of years where the costume is very important, as well as the backdrop, the commune and the school in Beijing, and then Li leaves his home in China and goes to Houston, and we have a comparison of life in America against life in China. It was a huge job for Herbert Pinter, our production designer, to not only show this time change through China, but also the comparison with America and life in Houston. Of course, the interesting thing with Mao's Last Dancer is that we have a best-selling book by a writer, Li Xuanxin, who lived the experience. And we have a film that is telling his story. It was a big responsibility to try to transfer the book to film. It was an extraordinary story and something that inspired Jan Sardi and me back in 2004 when we read the book. And it was important for us to tell this story in a way that was true for the audience who had read the book. And when we brought Bruce Beresford into it, he too felt that need, I believe, to tell the story in a way that could be accessed by the reading audience. It's a great audience pleaser, and we have Bruce to thank for that. And I have Jan Sardi to thank for that too, for recognising what he could do in his adaptation. But most of all, I suppose, we really need to thank Li for telling us his story so movingly, and which he does for audiences now, and brings them to tears, as I think the film will, when we realise what enormous hardship he went through and what he was able to do with his life. And it empowers us all to know what we can do with our lives.